Welcome to the 14th virtual gathering of the Surrey Muse. My name is Jovian Radheshwar, and it is with pleasure that I am hosting this event this evening. The Surrey Muse is a wonderful art showcase, as you well know, that's taking place on the unceded Coast Salish territories of the nations of the Semiahmoo, Katzie, Kwikwetlam, Kwantlen, Kakayet, Swasin, Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh indigenous nations. These nations existed before Canada existed, and they will exist after Canada no longer is here. It's important to speak in solidarity with indigenous people worldwide in the world we live in today. As we speak and as we meet for the Surrey Muse, the people of Palestine are under occupation, just like our indigenous brothers and sisters in Canada are under occupation by us, the settler colonialists who live in this midst. What does that mean? What are you going to do to correct this historic injustice? Are you going to simply say words, or are you going to work to return land to those from whom it has been stolen? And how can we make amends and live together in this world? Indeed, we are entering the summer, and the particular theme of this Surrey Muse is the changing of seasons. And as we move into this summer season, this beautiful Pacific Northwest summer season, we must think about those who continue to live under pandemic, who continue to live under occupation, and who continue to live under injustice around the world. Thank you. Today, we will be joined by four wonderful artists: Aislinn Hunter, Linda Xia, Samya Arif, and Deborah Vieyra. And the art that has been created for the particular graphic image for today's Surrey Muse has been created by Gabi D. And that particular artwork, of course, depicts the colors of nature and the seasons. And so with that, I welcome you to the 14th virtual gathering of the Surrey Muse. My name is Jovian Radheshwar, and I'm your host for this evening. This month's Surrey Muse featured author is Aislinn Hunter.
Hi, my name is Aislinn Hunter, and I'm happy to be here reading at the Surrey Muse event. And thank you, Surrey Muse, for having me attend. I'll be reading today a little bit just from my novel, The Certainties, which came out in the pandemic. And in true pandemic fashion, I'm wearing a nice top and flannel pajama bottoms. But you don't need to know that because I'm not going to stand up. I thought I would start my reading today with just a longer version of my epigraph. One of the things that's interesting about an epigraph, I think, for a writer, and that's that little quote that comes at the beginning of maybe your book of poetry or your novel, is that sometimes the full epigraph doesn't get its total due. And my epigraph means a lot to me. It's in both The Certainties and in my last book of poetry, Linger Still. And it's just an excerpt from a line of poetry, from a poem, of Dermot Healy's. And Dermot was my mentor. He's an amazing Irish writer. If you haven't had the pleasure of discovering his work, I encourage you to do so, Dermot Healy. Anyways, the epigraph in The Certainties goes like this, and then I thought I'd read the full poem as a way of starting. So the epigraph that I use for The Certainties is just this part. Go now, beside the uncertainties, in black veils stand the certainties. So that's just the little bit that I've used. And again, in 2 books in a row now. So obviously it's some sort of beacon of some kind of idea for me that I keep reaching toward expressing, right? I think that an epigraph can come before you write a book, can come midway through a book, or it can come toward the end. But always somehow it feels like a distilled version of the project, of the thing that you are trying to talk about. There will be dog noise in the background. I'm sorry. That's Cooper licking the other dog's empty bowl, dropping it on the floor, trying to get everything out of it. 1 second. Koopy, hey, buddy, come here. 1 sec, I'll be right back. Oop, leave it. You can do it. I know you're so hungry all the time. Leave it. I hope you got a good perusal of my bookshelf while I was doing that. These are my PhD books behind me, particularly impressive because there's a lot of philosophy. Impressive to me even, frankly. Okay, so this is Dermot Healy's poem, the full poem, called The Quick, Slow Boat. And it's from his last collection of poetry, which was published just after he died, called The Travels of Sorrow. The beautiful image from Sean McSweeney, the Irish painter on the cover. So The Quick, Slow Boat by Dermot Healy. The wind approaching like a dog in a hurry. Take everything in, the stool and the cot. It's coming into November. Time to get ready, to forget, to remember. Look out at that boat, the fierce wave on the prow. I'd risk heresy, I would. Go now. Beside the uncertainties in black veils stand the certainties. Christ, King, go to the devil and settle that row, not of our making. That's Dermot. I miss him. He's a good man. Okay, and a great writer. Wait, a great man and a great writer, but he was a good man. You have to say with an Irish accent, he's a good man. All right, so I'm going to read from the hardcover version of The Certainties, which has a fox on it, a fox whom I love. And I'm just going to start at the beginning, and maybe I'll take a break after the first kind of little piece and talk for a minute, and then I'll just jump back in. Thank you for coming again. Did I mention I'm in a nice top and flannel pajamas? It feels so vaguely formal and informal. So what you need to know at the beginning of The Certainties, assuming you haven't read The Flaps, is that my protagonist is a 50-year-old man. He is standing on a balcony as we begin the novel. He's German-born, has been an academic, a philosopher, a cultural critic, thinker. He's been living in Paris for much of his later life. And it's 1940, and so the Germans have come into France. And in 1940, in June, one of the largest sudden migrations in human history occurs, where all of a sudden everyone in Paris, but also many people from different parts of France, start emptying out and pouring into the south of France in order to escape the Nazis. It was called L'Exode, and again, at that time, it was one of the largest sudden mass migrations in human history. So I was interested, at the outset with this book in talking about what it means to lose your home, what uncertainty is on a deep existential level. And and so my protagonist, he has come out, as we will learn in the novel, come out of Paris along with so many other millions of people to try to get south of the Loire. And in his case, he gets into Spain in the north, comes illegally over the Pyrenees and ends up in northern Spain, and expects to be able to go through to Portugal and then on to America, because he has passes and papers, visas and papers, and but he's stopped in Spain with his two friends and placed under house arrest in a hotel. So this is where the book begins. He's in the hotel under house arrest. I stand on my hotel balcony and look to the sea and to the sky's unbridled light. On the beach below, the gulls thrash and squawk. A vagrant scrounges for cigarette stubs. As I watch him, the same thought circles. When we are dead, we will not know our nations. The vagrant crouches in his baggy trousers, sweeps the pebbles with the side of his hand and pockets what he finds there. His hair is thin and patchy, and he scratches at it frequently. For an hour, I've watched him tread back and forth across the short stretch of beach in his bare feet. His feet have given me ample pause as I've been up since dawn, trying to decide if I'd prefer to die with my shoes on or off. Sometime around 7, the hotel keeper dropped a breakfast tray outside my door. I can imagine the ants I saw on the ground floor of the hotel tipping their antennae toward the heel of bread and drizzle of oil. The old woman is long past apologizing for the weak tea or the size of the rations. Her sort is one we keep encountering, wary of us, of what trouble we might bring, even as she stuffs the crumpled pesetas we give her into a tin. The breeze coming in off the sea is warm and fresh. Already in the morning light, a man and a woman with skin still sun-kissed from summer wade out into the bay. She's wearing a bright yellow swimming costume, her dark hair tied in a plait. Beyond them, a sailboat lolls gently in the harbor, as if the world were not in tatters, as if this were simply another September day. Further out again, past the twin points of the headland, a merchant ship steams south, heading toward Barcelona, or perhaps as far as Tangier. My death in front of me as I stand here, as palpable as that boat, cutting through the water. So I guess part of my project, with the certainties, which is an ironic, meant to be a gently ironic title, I guess part of my project was that I was interested in trauma. When I started this novel, the Syrian migrant crisis, the migrant crisis on the whole, but in particular, the Syrian migrant crisis was in its full throes and daily on the news from my comfortable home here in British Columbia, the unceded indigenous lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, in my case. From the comfort of this place where I am a settler, I was discomforted. And I think I was wondering what to do, how to be in relation to international crises that seemed close but distant. And I think that in that thinking, I started reading about migration. I started reading about forced migration in particular and exodus. And I knew that I didn't have the authority. I couldn't conjure the authority to write about something as contemporary and unfamiliar to me as the crisis that was unfolding 7 years ago when I began this book. But I knew, as somebody with an academic track record, and by which I mean I have a PhD and 2 master's degrees, so I know what research is. And I love research, and I find value in it. I knew that I could go back and find other stories of migration or of exodus where there would be a lot of firsthand accounts, and ideally firsthand accounts in English or translated into English. So that I could accountably, I think, write a narration that... Hold on one sec. I have to get rid of that text. I hope you can't see that. It's my mother. I wanted, to write something about that experience, which was maybe a truth that I could access, right, through firsthand accounts and through those kinds of narratives. So that is what I did, I think. I did. And I think I did it truthfully to the historical world of 1940, that I researched and read about and then spent so much time imagining. Right. Okay. So here he is on his balcony now. Also, I should say that part of this book is based on the real life experience. How do we talk about it when we say informed by, not based on, informed by the life of the great philosopher Walter Benjamin, who left Paris in 1940 and escaped over the Pyrenees and into Spain, and was also waylaid or prevented from moving forward through Spain, and who ended up in a hotel in Portbou, the same town, trying to decide whether he wanted to live or die given the circumstances. So the amazing philosopher Walter Benjamin, and some of his energy underpins some of the energy of this book. Right. My time is almost up, so I'm just going to read 2 more pages. Thank you again for being here. Yesterday afternoon, so we're just picking up where we were. He's standing on the balcony. Yesterday afternoon, before my companions and I were placed under detention, I walked along the Passage de la Sardana to a restaurant called Peridou. There is a wine I'm fond of, a hearty red by a Bordeaux vintner, and I was, if I'm being truthful, looking for something close enough to transport me back to better days in Paris. This wine was one I would drink with my friends from the philosophy department when we met at the Café in Saint-Germain. The 5 of us under the cafe's striped awning, arguing causality or perception as if we were closing in on problems that could be solved. It was 1:15 when I set out from the hotel, turning right onto the Passage. The street and the beach were quiet. A man in a clerk's uniform passed me without meeting my eye, and then a couple overtook me heading toward the pier. The old men occupying the shaded benches that faced the sea kept their eyes on the boats that had been pulled up above the tide line and did not turn to watch me. The buildings I passed under were weather-worn and pitted by bullets or gouged by bombs. There was a hole in the street which a woman casually walked around. Coming off the mountain the previous evening, we'd passed by worse damage near the train station, the face of a church reduced to rubble, the remains of a house slumped between crumbling apartments. Compared to the 3 Spanish restaurants I passed on my way to the Peridou, places with washed canopies and clean tablecloths, a few customers on their terraces, the Peridou was desolate. At La Dorada, the tables lined up under the plantain trees each had a vase of bright red peonies in their center. How absurd, I thought, that people were still growing flowers, that flowers still willed themselves to bloom. Unlike La Dorada, the Peridou's courtyard was gloomy and sour-smelling. There were rivulets of water running down the cobblestones as if someone had sloshed a bucket at the source of the stench and then given up. There was no one outside, so I had my choice of the 10 tables enclosed within its thin railing, and chose the one closest to the bench, so that the mineral lilt of the sea was before me. So my character is sitting by the sea, and at the end of this chapter, he sees something that informs the rest of the book. So I'll just read that he sees someone. So I'll just read that last section. After I finished my meal, the woman who had been pegging laundry on the house on the hill appeared again, opening her gate and coming down the path to the Passage. She was wearing a pleated dress that fell just below her knees and a straw hat over her boyish hair. Holding on to her gloved hand was a little girl in a mauve dress with a band of lace along the hem and shiny black shoes bowed with ribbons. She looked to be about 4 or 5 years old. Like her mother, her dark hair was short. Neither of them shared the features of the locals, but in every other way, clothing and disposition, they seemed to belong. Distracted by the absence of some item in her purse, the mother stopped just before the Peridou to rummage through her bag. The girl, loosened from her mother's grip, turned and walked toward me. It was maybe 20 paces to the Peridou's tables, not more, and then she was in front of me, her huge brown eyes staring inquisitively at what, I cannot say, the empty plate and wineglass in front of me, or my face, my hair wilder than usual, my mustache in need of trimming, the skin below my eyes puffy and marked the slightest bit by the purple dye from my spectacles, which became wet during the climb. It occurred to me to say hello, to entertain her in some way, but that would have diminished what was passing between us in that moment. Her world opening up, and unfolding, and her taking me into that opening even as my own world was closing. A child saying with the slightest lift of a smile that it is all right, that the world will go on with purpose, that it may diminish, but it will not end. Lo siento, the mother said, and I blinked up at her fine, open face, noted her nervous smile. She had a small change purse in her hand now, presumably the lost object. I nodded as if to say that her daughter was not bothering me, and the woman switching to English said, "She's a very busy child." "Je comprends," I said, "I understand." The woman smiled again and placed her hand on her daughter's head. If there was wariness in the gesture and awareness of the dangers of associating with a refugee, she did not convey this. Did not look down the street to see if she was being observed, as the woman at the hotel had done, and as so many others had done in the weeks and months before this moment. "I'm also a visitor here," she said, taking her daughter's hand and leaning down to admonish the child with a whisper. "Pia," she began, and this was followed by a reprimand that carried within it the dual tones of chastisement and love. When her short speech was finished, the woman reached across the table with her free hand and gripped mine quickly. "I wish you luck, sir." And then the two of them started down the passage, the girl turning to wave goodbye. "I see you," her wave was saying. And in my heart, I said, "I see you back. I see you. I see you. I see you." Thanks for hanging out with me. I hope everyone's doing well. Blessings upon all of your houses. Stay kind, be good people. Thanks again.
This month's Surrey Muse featured author is Aislinn Hunter. Aislinn Hunter is an award-winning novelist, poet, and educator. She is the author of 8 books, including The World Before Us, which is a winner of an Ethel Ellison Fiction Prize, and her most recent novel, The Certainties, published by Knopf in 2020, and is currently shortlisted for that same prize once again. She holds degrees in art history, creative writing, writing and cultural politics, and English literature. She teaches creative writing at Kwantlen Polytechnic University in Surrey and Simon Fraser University in the Writers' Studio. Please welcome to the Surrey Muse, Aislinn Hunter. This month's poet for the Surrey Muse is Linda Xia. Linda Xia is an emerging novelist and poet who is about to launch her debut novel, Air of Blood and Secrets, with New Degree Press in August. Linda has been writing poetry since she was an angsty 13-year-old in desperate need of an outlet. Solidarity. These days, she primarily writes spoken word about life. Her poetry can be found in various anthologies, including Dreamtastic from Polar Expressions and Heart of Solstice from Young Writers of Canada. Linda has been traveling the world the last 3 years as a student at the Minerva schools at KGI. As well, she has built a bike, ran a half marathon, and written a novel. She is still figuring out what she wants to do with her life. Welcome, Linda Xia.
Hi, I'm Linda. I'm super excited to be here. I really appreciate Surrey Muse giving me the opportunity to share my work with you. Tonight, I wanted to share a series of poems I've written over the past couple of years about the concept of home and figuring out who I am in this crazy complex world that we live in. So this first poem is called Homesick Zero. This is a poem about missing home. 1. This is a poem about feeling lonely at 5 a.m. in the morning while the rest of the world sleeps, when the sky still holds traces of dark. And all I can think is that it has been 72 days since I first arrived in San Francisco, 72 days since I last heard my sister's voice. 72 days since I realized that my location is not the only thing that is changing. 2. This is a poem about longing. For the life I used to have, an idealized version, for the kind of family I might have had if only I'd tried harder, if only I hadn't waited until the very last minute. They say it's futile to blame myself. You were a child, it wasn't your fault, but it is easier to take responsibility, because if it was my fault, if I was the problem, I could change, I could fix it, I could do better. So the only thing worse than missing home is missing the home you no longer have the chance to create. 3. This is a poem about feeling guilty for asking myself if I made the right choice in leaving home, because I shouldn't be asking myself that. The problem with making choices that no one supports is that you know you are responsible for them, that you become responsible, reassuring your parents that you are okay when you aren't sure that you are. Because I have too much pride to even consider admitting that they may have been right, that there will come a time when I will miss the home I tried so hard to escape, that there will come a time when I realize that being the one who leaves isn't all that much better than being the one who is left behind. 4. This is a poem about being forgotten, because no one back home is waiting for me. I might live in the same time zone, but I am in a different world now, and time is passing in the one I've left behind. So I should be happy that my best friend is doing well on her midterms. I should be happy for my sister who is about to graduate. But all I can think is that these are things we should have been doing together. I am the only one saying I wish you were here, because as always, I'm the one who needs them more than they need me. 5. This is a poem about feeling afraid, living in a state of constant vigilance, shields up, mask on, because I learned early on that no one can hurt you if they don't know who you really are. As much as I miss the life I used to have, I can't help but hate the pieces I've brought with me. The fear of forming relationships, they cannot last. The fear of not being good enough, of being left behind, even though I'm the one now who's been doing the leaving. Because it is so much easier to just expect the worst. You can't be disappointed if you don't have expectations, because sometimes the price for happiness is just too high for me to pay. 6. This is a poem about losing myself, not knowing who I am anymore in this new city where I could be anyone. The possibilities are overwhelming. And in trying to become who I wanted so badly to be, I murdered who I might have been, who I might really be. I wish I were brave enough to claim the parts of myself I am ashamed of. The problem with blaming the identity as a choice is that it is then up to you to choose. 7. This is a poem about feeling lonely, about longing, about feeling guilty, about feeling forgotten, about feeling afraid, about losing myself. 8. This is a poem about finding home. So this next poem is called Selling Me Always. It was written about a year after I wrote Homesick. There is a used car salesman living in my head. He's practical, he's cynical, he's dangerous, despicable. He's never going to let me rest. He's never going to let me go. He asks me, haven't you lived? Never have I had amaranthine beauty take my breath away, like iridescent light splattered across a star sky canvas, or endless snow, an endless day. I've never risked everything to stand atop a sleeping mountain, slashed around in sun-kissed puddles, let a storm drench my soul, let myself let go. I've always listened to the salesman. He says, tell me about your dreams, the ones you guard so carefully, the ones you pretend you've outgrown, when deep down you are still 8 years old, running down grassy hills, pretending to be a warrior, a dragon rider, a hero. Because your world is bigger than your backyard now. It is defined not by how fast you can walk or how fast you can run, but by the unexplored planes of your imagination. You have escaped. He says, tell me about your world, the one you grew up in, the one in your mind, because I remember you, 14 years old and already ready to shuffle off this mortal coil. Don't you see how you've changed? Haven't you seen that there is another world out there, one that need not be tainted by the crucible of the childhood you were forged in? If only you could let yourself bend just a little before you break. You do not have to trade honor for acceptance, nor freedom for friendship. You do not have to venture behind this waterfall alone. He asks me, haven't you loved? Never. Because true love is supposed to last. It's not supposed to slip away. I was taught to believe in reality and tangibility and the practicality of a well-learned mind, because yearning only beckons heartbreak, and even glaciers have given way to lateral moraine. It is hard to love when you are afraid of being hurt, of being abandoned, of not being enough, because debt collectors do not wait for periodic payments, and the only kind of car I want is the one I can't afford, the one the salesman drives. He calls it unrealistic dreams and tries to sell me cold logic. He says, tell me about you. He asks me, this used car salesman whose voice I've learned to hate, haven't you laughed? He set up shop. He'll never leave his residence in my brain. He tells me I should grow up, that this asynchronous development between my mind and my heart must end, that I am crazy to want more, and haven't I always listened to the salesman? Haven't I lived his logic? He says, tell me about you. Girl, living on borrowed time, who maybe shouldn't run into the ocean before she has learned to swim. Girl, running into rising tides, who maybe shouldn't get back on her bike the day after being hit by a bus. Girl, pretending to be brave, refusing to be afraid. When will you finally regret? When the dust settles, when the blinders are gone, when you have been left behind. Girl who has never lived, who has never loved, who has never laughed. What will you have left? But what he doesn't understand is that I have lived now. I have laughed now. I have survived, and I am in love with this city. I am in love with Friday morning bike rides up insurmountable hills. I am in love with night hikes up mountains I can barely see. I am in love with lying beneath palm trees as the wind threatens to blow my laptop away. I am in love with ritual disagreements in chat, with sleepless nights spent dreaming with who I am becoming. So what he doesn't understand is me. There's a used car salesman living in my head. He's practical, he's cynical, he's dangerous, despicable. He's never going to let me rest, but I am learning to let him go. This next poem is called Look Up. Before Icarus fell, he flew. With wings of feathers and wax he rose, conqueror of the skies, free at last. Before Icarus fell, he flew. Did you think to look up? Did you wait too long? Did you see triumph or tragedy? Yes, it matters. When things come to an end, we forget that before the end, things happened. Before we were here, we were somewhere else. Before we were lost and confused, there was a time when we were, at the very least, a little less confused. Those times matter too. Why are we so obsessed with endings and beginnings? Why do we not talk about the in-betweens, the stories? Why are we so obsessed with results? Remember that before Icarus fell, he flew. We are not made of numbers, of hourly earnings or awards achieved. We are made of contradictory dispositions and ever-changing tides of emotion. We are human, but we are also infinite. There are worlds inside us, galaxies that could exist if we just chose to acknowledge their existence. I know that we get withdrawal symptoms now if we are too long away from our laptops. I know that sometimes success looks like a number, a line on a resume, an award. A main success should look like making time for those who matter, even when it is hard, getting 8 hours of sleep, remembering to eat actual meals. I believe that we are all capable of greatness. The question is then, if we are capable of living with the cost of that greatness, will you look up? Failure is a side effect of living. We are living, we will fail. History is written by the victors, but they do not write your story. Yes, there was a story. Do you remember that we are not here long? So when life sucks, and life sucks a lot sometime, will you look up? Because there are also times when life is great, when the trees are transforming, when the first snowfall comes, when we all set off to forge our own paths. I will be here for you. We may exist within differences, between worlds, but we exist at the same time. We are square worlds in a round universe, misfits that fit together. We are not constructs in the corridors of someone else's imagination. What could yet be is up to you. Will you look up? Will you take my hand? Will you walk with me in a world that is not made of numbers, because we are not made of numbers. We are made of flesh and bone and skin stretched taut over passion and curiosity. We are infinite, unconditional. Will you look up? Before Icarus fell, he flew. Will you take my hand? This poem is called Searching. I live my life in a constant state of searching. I look for answers when there are none to be found. I learn to live with questions I'm never quite brave enough to ask. Like, what do you see when you look at me? Do you see the color of my hair, the shape of my eyes, the tone of my skin? Does anyone see the passion that burns white hot within, that demands I conquer discomfort and disregard pain? Because I've been taught that my pain is inconsequential. I live my life in constant pursuit, calm, but once I find it, I no longer want it. Tell me, what is the antithesis of calm? Is it stress? Is it anger, agitation, anxiety? Sometimes I think I don't have a homeostasis. I have a roller coaster of emotions that demand that I listen and I feel, even when I would rather feel nothing at all. There's no way to graph my emotions, no way to create a legend for the way that my heart pounds in my chest, even when I am sleeping, to put a label on the thoughts that race through my mind. I am furious that I am at home, that I chose this, because the housing market and the economics of my mind told me that my sanity is worth less than $5,000. I am frustrated that my life is now these four walls and this cage of a house, because I have seen the world now. I cannot pretend that I haven't. I am lonely and scared and heartbroken because the boy I love lives an ocean away and goes to sleep when I wake up. Because my best friend lives 10 minutes away, but I can't see her because there's a pandemic, and surely it's better to be safe rather than sorry. Every time I come back to Canada, I feel as if I am 8 years old again, yielding and afraid and unwilling to advocate for what I need. Because somehow here, at home, I am a lesser being, one who can't take up too much space or time. I live my life by numbers now. I know how many hours I spend on work, on answering emails, on academics. But I don't have a category for tracking time spent writing, because I somehow can't quite be proud of time spent writing. But I track everything else. I am so tired of denying what is in my nature and what I love, because society doesn't care. It doesn't care what I want, what I do, what I sacrifice to somehow be the person I'm expected to be, so that no one blames me if I'm harassed walking down the street or tells me that I should have been more careful. I live my life in constant pursuit. Once I find what I am looking for, I no longer want it, because I am not looking for answers to questions I'm too afraid to ask, or for calm, or where my time goes. I know what people see when they look at me. I just wish they saw something different. For me, the antithesis of calm is restlessness, the searching for what has not yet been found. I know where my time goes, even if I can't admit it. I am looking for me, because I've lived 2 decades now, and I still do not know who I am when I am at home. And finally, this is my last poem. My sister says that names don't have power, that our appellations don't matter. But our mother, Chinese immigrant, said, if you don't have an English name, no one will know what to call you. But what significance is there in a 5-letter name that a 5-year-old could spell? I shared a name with my principal, my librarian, my childhood nemesis, his 92-year-old grandmother, and all that I could live with. If only an English name made me Canadian. But it's not a negation of a foreign last name. An English name doesn't make my hair less black, my eyes less brown. It doesn't make me look Canadian. so please, just call me Elle. My sister says that pronunciation doesn't matter, that confusion is inevitable. But our father, Chinese immigrant, said, be proud of your heritage, of your last name. But what significance is there in a name that no one can pronounce? 8 years old, I learned to spell my last name before anyone asked. I was Linda Xia because no one can pronounce the anglicized version of a Chinese name. The Chinese last name doesn't make me Chinese. It's not a license for stereotypical remarks. Because I'm not a poster child for foreign lands, a Chinese last name doesn't mean I speak the language. It doesn't mean that I can't engage with you in English. So please, just call me Elle. My sister says that we don't get to choose what other people call us. But I, girl born in Canada, say, please, just call me Elle. Thank you.
The featured artist of the Surrey Muse this month is Samya Arif, OCEA. Samya Arif is a visual artist, illustrator, and graphic designer who has been part of the Karachi-based electronic music collective Forever South. One Love. Global Karachi, Global Sindh in the house here. Samya Arif. Forever South indeed. A graduate of the Indus Valley School of Art and Architecture in Communication Design, her practice focuses on observations of social and cultural paradigms from a female's perspective, embodying women and spaces, the spaces that they inhabit. That perhaps is pronounced WIMXN. She has been a regular illustrator at Pakistan's Herald Magazine, and her work has been exhibited in Pakistan, India, the UAE, England, the United States, Belgium, Spain, and Canada. As an artist, designer, and DJ, Samya has been featured in the New York Times, the BBC, Vice, CBC, The Fader, and Pitchfork. She has collaborated on several international projects, such as the Bombay-based Taxi Fabric, where her designs were featured in the band Coldplay's video, the British band Coldplay's video. And her clients include Penguin Books, HarperCollins, Macmillan Publishers, Al Jazeera, NPR, and Google. Samya lives and works in Karachi, and she is a part-time professor at her alma mater. Please welcome this powerful sister from Karachi, Samya Arif, One Love Worldwide. Welcome, Samya Arif, to the Surrey Muse. It is with great pleasure that we welcome you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Samya Arif, and I go by the artist name Oshia. I'm an artist, illustrator, and graphic designer based in Karachi, Pakistan. And today I'll be sharing my work with you. A lot of my work is based on my own observations and experiences of growing up as a girl in Pakistan, and also the women that surround me and the spaces that they inhabit. So let's have a look. I wanted to begin by sharing some of my earlier work. These are a set of posters that I designed for Take Back the Tech and Bites for All, which are two organizations fighting for equal rights for all sexes in Pakistan. And the idea behind the first poster, which is titled Aurat Raj, meaning women's rule in a digital world. So the idea behind this was to show different kinds of women just like chilling on this planet that's inhabited by women and using technology without any bother. And the second poster actually shows all kinds of people coming together and living very harmoniously on the internet. And I think this was very important because at this time, Pakistan had started advocating for equal rights for all sexes online. And especially for women, since they face a lot of harassment and threats and such online. So these were sort of to advocate for equal rights and to encourage women to use the internet without feeling harassed. This is one of my first series that I exhibited here in a gallery in Karachi, Pakistan. This series was titled Women of My Land. And for this, I created, I think, around six illustrations, which were accompanied with a song. So it was basically like it was an album of songs, and each song had an illustration that represented it. Here I've shared 4 of the illustrations, and these were based on my own observations and experiences of growing up as a girl and into a woman in Pakistan. The first artwork is titled Cosmic Ninja, in which a girl is wearing a hijab and she's holding an ice cream. And it was a sort of tongue-in-cheek kind of illustration in which I wanted to show that being religious doesn't mean that you can't be sexual or a fun person or groovy. And this was inspired by these 2 sisters from a small town called Thatta near Karachi in Pakistan. And they're really big sort of celebrities on social media, like influencers. And one of the twin sisters writes poetry and the other creates art. And a lot of it is inspired by Islam. So I wanted to show a different side of Islam and the women who practice it, other than the sort of image that is portrayed by Western media. The second one is like a traditional bride in a sort of traditional dress, except she's wearing pants underneath. And marriage is considered like this really essential part of a woman's life in Pakistan and in our culture. And that's something I wanted to, I don't agree with that. So I wanted to show something in a sort of humorous way where the bride is stepping on the groom's headgear and his mustache is on fire in the background, and the henna on her hand has a cross in it to represent no to marriage. So because it's not the most essential part of a woman's life, there is so much more. And the third image underneath the first on the right top, on the left top, is me actually smoking a cigar. And that's inspired from this photo a friend took of me at a party. And I'm a smoker, but I didn't face any backlash from my family or friends for health reasons. It was all mostly towards cultural reasons, like women shouldn't smoke and it doesn't look good. And, because there's a preconceived image of how women should be in our culture, like all pure and clean and very, very straight and doing the right thing. And obviously smoking doesn't come in that. And so I wanted to sort of make that because, just because I smoked a cigar, I was called a fast girl by someone in the family, or smoked a cigarette, So this artwork was titled Fast Girls. And the last one's actually in memory of 2 women who were martyred in Pakistan. The first one is they're the images of the 2 women at the back, and in front there's a girl sitting. She's my friend, and she's reminiscing about these 2 women. The first one, who's wearing this beautiful headgear, is Kandeel Balot, and she was this really provocative, amazing Pakistani social media celebrity who was actually murdered by her own brother over honor. And the second one is Sabine Mahmood, who is like a great person who was a great person and ran this, the only community center in Karachi, which is like a huge city. And this was the first of its kind. And it supported minorities and artists, and especially young people from such, segments. And she was gunned down because of supporting celebrities, because of supporting minorities and some people who have been targeted by the state in our country. So she was actually murdered over that. So, and she was someone who was close to me. So I wanted to create this artwork in sort of honor of both of these women. So other than my own personal work on women, I do a lot of commercial work as well as an illustrator, specifically like as a freelance illustrator. And these are some of the book covers that I've gotten to create over the last few years. Defiance of the Rose is a very special book cover that I got to create for one of the greatest Urdu poets of all time. And she was a woman by the name of Parveen Shakir, and someone you should definitely check out. And this this book was her poems translated into English. She had a very different life for a woman living in the 90s in Pakistan. She was killed in a car accident when she was like in her mid 40s. So it's kind of like tragic, how she passed away, and she had just left a son behind. But she was really cool because she was a divorced woman who was very independent, who wrote poetry and was also a government officer, like a high ranking government officer. And so this was a book cover for her, and her poetry is actually very dark and beautiful and deep, and talks about all kinds of things like existence and the soul and religion and her thoughts and love. So definitely worth checking out. And what's been really interesting actually is that most of these book covers that you're seeing actually on this slide are all created for South Asian women authors and poets and poet. So, I mean, this was really exciting for me because growing up, I didn't see a lot of brown people represented in the literature I would read, or obviously, or on the book covers. And I'm happy to see that's changing now with huge publishing houses like HarperCollins and Penguin Books sort of bringing on Desi writers on board, and then also hiring illustrators like me, like Desi illustrators and artists who can make the book covers for such writers and authors. These are 3 more books I got to create. The third one's actually for a British author. I think she's actually Welsh, and her name is CM Maguire, as you can see over here. And that was a really interesting book too, because it's kind of based on Welsh, what would you call it, like fantasy, Welsh fairy tales and all of that. So I really enjoyed working on that as well. I've just been talking about the project so far, but I think if you've been looking at my work, you can see I love using colors a lot. A lot of my work and illustration and the colors are inspired by Pakistani culture, and also to a large degree by psychedelia, the psychedelic era of the 60s and 70s. I'm really inspired by that. And also surrealism, just love all the surreal artists like Frida Kahlo and Salvador Dali. So yeah. And going ahead, yes. So this is some editorial work that I've gotten to create over the years. And most of it actually that you're seeing right now is for Herald Magazine, which you could say is like the New York Times of Pakistan. But sadly, they had to shut down office, I think, since they couldn't do the print version of the magazine anymore. But they're a political magazine, but they do cover all sections of life, like art and politics, I mentioned already, and lifestyle and fashion and so forth. And so these are three separate issues that I got to work on with two covers. The first one was actually about, the first one actually came out after the murder of the social media celebrity I was talking about earlier by the name of Kandeel Balot. And this whole issue was looking at the rising alarm of female murders in Pakistan and why that's happening. The second one is actually, this is the head of our army a few years ago. And his name was Raheel Sharif. And he was the one who basically was fighting terrorism in Pakistan. But there was a lot of criticism regarding him, especially because he was, you know, he was conducting these very like army sort of cleanup of terrorists in the northern part of our country. And there was a lot of bombing and a lot of civilians getting arrested. But on the front, he was trying to portray this very soft image of the army. And, you know, like the army supports Pakistani people and has their best interest. And so this was kind of, this issue was kind of questioning that. And so we see him holding a rose, but at the back, there are like these bombs going off. And the third issue is about the rise in drug use in Pakistan, especially with crystal meth and marijuana and such drugs. And so this was looking at that. And this is another sort of editorial that I got to do for the same Herald Magazine. And this was about the presence of ISIS in Pakistan. And I mean, this was when, you know, the government was finding sort of, I mean, there were attacks and ISIS was taking responsibility for it. And in certain areas, like the pamphlets were distributed with the ISIS signature, like they were trying to recruit people. And so this whole article was looking at that danger, the presence of that danger in our country. And so far I've shown you guys my personal work that I've exhibited regarding women and some of the editorial work I've gotten to do along with some posters. And so a lot of this huge section of my work that I create is for musicians in Pakistan mostly. And these are a set of album covers that I've gotten to do over the years for different musicians. I've been lucky in getting this work because a lot of my friends and my partner in life, they're all musicians. And so I've gotten to create these artworks for them. I think a lot of this work is just done as passion because I'm extremely passionate about music. And just getting to create art for music is a very spiritual experience for me. Because I feel all of the covers that I'm sharing, the album covers I'm sharing here, I got really open-ended briefs for them, and there was no creative sort of hold on it. So there was complete freedom for me to try out different things. And I think I was exploring a lot of different art styles when I was working on these covers. And so there's Alien Panda Jury, the Sound Science Love cover, which is the first one. And that's for like my friend who does electronic music. The second one's for this, second one's actually for a pretty big band from Pakistan called the Mikal Hassan Band. And they do really beautiful classical rock fusion music. The third one is Slow Spin, another friend of mine. She does this beautiful pop and ambient and sort of, alternative electronic music, and so forth. And so I feel these are really special to me because each has a completely different vibe and feelings. And I would listen to the music for a while, think about it for days, and then make this art while listening to these songs. So yeah, and if you're interested in checking out some contemporary alternative Pakistani music, these guys are great to check out. Just wanted to show the covers to you. So these are three more posters that I got to create for three documentaries, actually. The first two are kind of related. They're made by the same filmmakers, and they're set in like the Native American, the biggest Native American reservation in the US. And it's based on the Navajo people, which is, they're the biggest Native American tribe in the US and the world, I believe. And so it was a look on their reservation. And the first one, Moroni for President, is about this guy who's trying to change, their situation and their circumstances, since they are struggling as a people on this reservation. They're just, kind of cut off from the rest of the world, and they've been given this piece of land to live in. And the US government itself doesn't really support them as much as it should. So the first documentary was a look on the political side of the Navajo Nation. And the second one is actually about this person by the name of Zach, and he wants to be called Mr. Navajo. He's really into the pageant, the women's pageant, actually, for the women's beauty pageant in the Navajo Nation. But he's gay and he stands up for LGBTQ rights. And he feels that the Native American people were actually very open to the concept of homosexuality and all kinds of other things. But when they were sort of colonized, and they were put into the reservations and they were kind of educated in Western ways, I think that ideology of theirs disappeared. So this person is trying to bring that thought, that frame of thought back into his people. And the third one's actually very special. It was about, it's a documentary about women in Sri Lanka learning to swim, which was really important because after the tsunami that came in Sri Lanka, the biggest number of casualties were in women and children. And they found out the reason for that was that women didn't learn to swim because of cultural reasons, because they did not feel comfortable wearing swimming costumes. And so this whole documentary is about, this woman trying to teach, this British woman actually trying to teach the Sri Lankan women how to swim, and then, telling them they don't all have to wear swimming costumes. There are like other ways to cover yourself up while swimming with bodysuits, etc. So it was really fun, and it features one of the actual swimmers, women who learned how to swim in Sri Lanka. So these are that. And these are another set of posters I got to create for a very controversial series that came out in Pakistan. They're a web series, and they came out on this platform called Z, which is pretty big in South Asia, especially India. And I think we have very traditional series that usually come on Pakistani channels, and this entire series broke away from that. It was about these 4 vigilante women who have been sort of wronged in life, and they form this club where they kind of recruit other women who've also been wronged, and they go around the city taking revenge from men. They open this this agency where other women can come and sort of complain to them about what's gone wrong in their life or who wronged them. And so these 4 vigilantes then go and take revenge. And it's a really interesting series. It shows women in a very powerful role, which we don't see as often anymore on Pakistani TV. So it was something really important. And it was controversial because it touched upon LGBTQ themes and prostitution and, just things people are not comfortable talking about. So it was even banned for a bit. But I think it's back on and anyone can view it on the Z5 platform. So I was really happy I got to work on these. It featured some of the top actresses in Pakistan. And it was just a lot of fun working on this project. This is a bus that I got to create for the US Embassy in Nepal. Basically, the exterior of the bus. And the best part is it's a book bus. So it travels around Nepal, lending books. People can buy books and sort of give them books or exchange books. And it opens up and it becomes like this little book cafe type of a place. So it's really, it was a really fun project. And I got to sort of design the entire exterior of the bus. It was kind of, I made it colorful so it stands out wherever it goes. And this is a photograph of it sort of driving. This is a really fun project I got to do for Google. You know how Google has these doodles for specific special days. And this one was for this Google Doodle was featured in Pakistan. And it features Iqbal Bano, which is one of the most prolific and celebrated and legendary ghazal singers of not only Pakistan, but entire of South Asia. And she's extremely revered, which is something I learned while I was working on this project, and just completely fell in love with her, because she was this really gutsy and ballsy woman. Um, at the time when she was very prominent, Pakistan was under dictatorship by Ziaul Haq, who sort of brought along the Islamization of Pakistan. And so she kind of stood, she stood against him in a way that he had banned this poet, um, a very famous poet of Pakistan. And she decided to sing that poet's poetry at a specific concert of where there were 50,000 people. And at the same time, the sari, which is like this garment mostly worn by women in India, that was also banned in Pakistan because it was, they were trying to create Islamization and they wanted to separate themselves from Indian culture. And so she wore the sari and sang this, banned poet whose name, one of the most revered poets of Urdu language by the name of Faiz Ahmed Faiz. And so she sang his poetry in the sari in a huge sort of stadium with 50,000 people there, and ended up getting banned herself. So, it was really interesting to read up on her, and she just has the most beautiful voice, and how she sings classical music. I think it's very unique. So this was this illustration I got to create for her, and I think I just wanted to show her in her beautiful glory, because she used to have these graceful hand movements while singing. And so this was like a sort of, ode to her. And this is the last sort of few pieces I wanted to show you all. These are these illustrations I created for one of my last exhibitions. And I just wanted to create a world where all the women were living in harmony and just having a great time together. And it's a planet only inhabited by women, and their god is a she, and all their prophets have been women. So just wanted to create this world where we're not at all bothered by men. And again, this was one of the artworks from the same series. Just a woman with a mosque at the back, just an eye sort of, floating above the mosque, and the woman is just lying in peace. And these little women are doing yoga around her. And there's just plants coming out of her, and she's and this is the last project that I wanted to share with you all that has just recently come out. And in Urdu text, it says Ghurti Nazar, which means staring eyes. And this was actually for this anthology that was recently published and released by this Indian-based collective called Karak. It's spelled Kadak. And I collaborated with one of the editors of the collective, and she's this beautiful, enigmatic, just amazing poet by the name of Sabika Abbas. And we basically sort of looked at what it was like to live in Karachi and Mumbai, since she's based in India, and what our experiences are as women, and how we feel that we are not able to sort of be part of public spaces, and we're kind of harassed by men with their looks and their touches, and the way we're perceived in public spaces as women. So if anyone would like to check it out, they can check it out on the Karak Collective website. I think if you Google it, it's going to be there. And yes, I think that's it from me for the presentation. I hope you all enjoyed looking at my work. You can see more of my work on my Instagram. My name is Samya Arif, just in case you're looking or on my website as well. And I hope you guys had a good time. Take care, everyone. Bye.
The open mic opener for this month's Surrey Muse is Deborah Vieyra, who is a writer who has been trying to quit writing for years. It's a remarkable problem to have. I'm a writer who's been trying to get started writing for years. Maybe we could change positions. After studying at the writer's studio at Simon Fraser University, Deborah came to terms with the fact that her quitting of writing is unlikely. She is the recipient of a Fulbright scholarship and holds an MA in Applied Theater from the University of Southern California. Deborah has published bits here and there, including in Entropy Magazine and Emerge 19, and is working on an anthology of new creation myths. Please welcome Deborah Vieyra.
Hi, my name is Deborah Vieyra. I am currently working on a collection of creation myths, and these are some short pieces from that collection. The Wound. In the beginning was the wound, and the wound was with God, and the wound was God. It was with God in the beginning. Through it all things were made, without it nothing was made that has been made. In the wound was life. The great wound sat aching for what we may now know in our time-bound world as stretched out centuries, pouring out pus into the pre-universe. And in each timeless hour, more and more septic the wound became. One day, the fly, a lonely traveller through nothingness, spotted the wound and liked the look of it. The wound, suppurating, weeping, eternally oozing, begged the fly to plunge into it. The fly agreed, thinking, as many lovers do, that it would find a home inside the wound. So in the fly dove, travelling through multicolored discharges of smells, at once a queasy sweet and then a sci-fi sour, into the hollows and deeper still, right into the stinking soul of the wound. There, the fly laid its eggs, called them love, and expired. In this now contaminated space, the conditions were just right for the first maggot to appear. Some called him Adam, and then another, and another, and another, until the wound was teeming. Now, with the fly dead, and the wound as the single mother of all creation, the wound forgot how to weep, and just got on with it. Children, we were born from a wound, and unto a wound we shall return. Silver linings. In the beginning there was trash, and nobody knew what to do with it. It had to do with this, you see. The gods were a hot mess. Truth be told, they didn't give a damn anymore. Lounging around, scoffing stardust. None of them had cleared their craters. None of them had de-hoarded their space junk. None of them had checked in on their immortal parents who, if memory served, were shoved onto a planet somewhere that no god could remember the location of. So how had this sorry state of affairs come to be? Let's go back. When the gods were appointed to their seats, must be thousands of years ago, but record tracking had gone out of the window, they took oaths and everything. To honor, protect, lead, serve, etc., etc., the whole universe and whatnot. And it seemed likely that they would do so, even to them, at least at the time. They were the ones that were to get the heavens out of the chaos their parents had got it into. Until they realized, as every generation does, how hard undoing is. That if one's plan was to fix things, one had another thing coming. They just didn't know how to kickstart the whole rejuvenation project. And so they sort of stopped trying. Which was fine, except for the fact that the survival of the heavens was at stake. The very survival. I mean, they were drowning in interstellar scrap. They were looking for a hero. A savior. Or at least a very capable cleaner. And then it happened. Out of the rubble, a very hungover Sylvie, a lowly god sweeping the bottom of the heavenly hierarchy, emerged. She half remembered what had happened the night before, a guilty fuck with that damn 27-tentacled goofball who just wouldn't stop treating her like she wasn't in the room. The sex wasn't even good. He kept those tentacles all for himself. Sylvie was mainly employed in planet maintenance, but now as the higher-ups began to lose their shit, well, who cared enough to keep track? So she just stopped bothering, really, Sylvie did. Until the day, of course, that she emerged from the rubble. I'm sick of this shit. I'm so sick of this goddamn shit. Look at this place. Who could really tell why that day was the tipping point for poor Sylvie? But it was. She just had it up to wherever is the point where you can no longer have it anymore. She picked up one piece of rubbish, an appallingly ugly piece of interstellar detritus that had been hovering about her Elysian hell, just waiting in vain for a spring clean in a springless world. She picked up another. What was she doing? There was no way she could clean up this mess. And that was just her superluminary suburb. What about the rest? And what would she do with the trash? The gods had long since abandoned the waste management program they had so ambitiously instituted at the beginning of their rule. Trim your waistline was the pithy word collection they had proudly come up with, not long after they'd accidentally invented the dark art of copywriting. With the program all but defunct, what would her clean-up efforts even lead to? Where would the trash even go? So through the brain fog Sylvie travelled, and off she went towards a place where she remembered hearing the sweet tinkles of creative endeavour. She remembered, was she a child god then, immersing herself in paint and powder, in make-believe and costume making, in putting on plays with the other neighbourhood gods? She remembered how seriously she took it. She remembered speaking worlds into being. She remembered how. So she captured a comet and cut out a head. She took a meteoroid that had arrived from who knows where and made a body. Under her bed, she found some dark matter. This would help fashion a heart. And then nebula for hair, and so she went and went until there in front of her eyes was a being that wanted to move and dance and play and work and talk. She let it. Sylvie animated her tiny being, breathing enough life into it for it to exist on its own. She called her creation Lilith. Sure, some patriarchs and their godsons went around calling her being a space trash creature. She simply ignored their taunts. Funny little junk baby, they would say. Trash tart. Seriously, they could kiss her Empyrean ass if they wanted to talk that way about her artwork. Then she realized that her cherubic construction would need a world to live in. This would be the next phase of her recycling and repurposing project. And so she opened up a black hole as wide as she could and began to fashion a garden out of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, also known as green space stuff. She planted what was left of a shooting star after it was shot. She grew the first cow from a mouldy piece of moon cheese that was lying under a roommate's pillow. She called the whole bang shoot Eden. With the leftovers she had lying around, she made some more animals to keep Lilith company. A warthog first, then a vampire squid. Don't worry, she got better with her designs as she went on. And then she made a partner for Lilith, so that she had someone to chat to and laugh with. Her name was Eve, and she gave them a personal assistant called Adam. He was to do the chores, so they could spend more time creating art and having good conversations. And from that beginning, the world came. And that is why the sweet little galactic garbage people look to the sky and pray and chant, every cloud has a silver lining. Sylvie, a humble maintenance worker, was the whole reason they existed. The higher-ups, on the other hand, continued to be useless and wasteful and dumb. But that was okay, because it gave Sylvie more trash that she could use for her project. Praise be, Sylvie. Thank you for all of it. In the beginning was the middle, perpetually the middle, world without end, world without beginning, world forever in climax. In the beginning, God made a batch of straight white men and then decided to go back to the drawing board. In the beginning, there was a sick kid lying on a hospital bed trying to kill off a virus. He needed an army of antibodies, and so people were made. In the beginning was the time we had together once, and that must have been the start of a whole universe. In the beginning, there was peace. So let's find it again, okay? In the beginning, there was an impulse, a desire, a love for something real. In the beginning was the thought I had while walking. We are the thoughts someone had while walking. In the beginning, creation was open source. All the gods had a say, and now we have design by committee. In the beginning, there was a lesson, but no pupil. In the beginning, there was a video call, but they wanted to meet in person. In the beginning, she swiped right. In the beginning, there was the first wet dream. In the beginning, she thought she was alone. In the beginning, there was a memorial. In the beginning, there was a painting that refused to be still. In the beginning, there was a god having a midlife crisis. In the beginning was a mistake. In the beginning, there were no words, so why do we have them now? In the beginning, there was the end of a thread that needed to be pulled. In the beginning, there was a button that said, press me. In the beginning, there was a button that said, don't press me. In the beginning, she felt weird, and so she Googled her symptoms. Turns out she was pregnant with all of this. In the beginning was the wound. And the wound was with God, and the wound was God. It was with God in the beginning. Through it, all things were made. Without it, nothing was made that has been made. In the wound was life.
And I don't need this love. I don't need this love. But I got nowhere to go. Now Annie's been feeding in the tunnel of love. She don't wanna see you no more. Dancing all night with the junkie priest, yeah, spinning across the threshold floor. And the widows with their haunted hearts, they sing to your desire. They tend their barbed wire gardens where no one mentioned that the world was on fire. Bertram's going subterranean, no, he doesn't got a choice. No. Spitting up pills through the latest manias, wonders can you hear his voice? No. And the widows with their hungry eyes have come Bet couldn't even bring her piano, had to leave everything behind. She's been moving on out through the neon graveyards, weeping through the bump and